Hello there, Frank Thacker here, and welcome to the Daily Peacemaker. Let's see, today we're going to do episode 6, part 3. So we've done part 1 and 2 in previous episodes. So very astutely, we decided to call this part 3. Seriously, a little context. Part 3 is the first 3 steps of Kingian Nonviolence. There are 6 steps, as you probably know. And in the context is that we here at the Daily Peacemaker feel that if we're going to create a culture of peace, it pretty much has to come from the bottom up, and it has to be grounded in nonviolence. And if we're going to try to live our lives as nonviolently as possible, it's very helpful to have a model or a philosophy of nonviolence, sort of a model, but a program maybe that you could use to guide you through. And one of the best that we've found is the Kingian principles and steps of nonviolence. So the first 2 sessions, were on the principles of Kingian nonviolence, and you can find them on the website or on our Facebook page or whatever. The first 2 sessions. So the third session is on we're going to switch now to the steps, and in Kingian nonviolence, the principles are often referred to as the talk, and the steps are referred to as the walk. So as you have heard many times, if you want to walk the talk, then that's what you need to do. It's pretty easy to talk, but let's see if you're going to walk the talk. So we've got the principles, the guidelines, if you will, the philosophy, and now we're going to look at the steps, what you can do in terms of your everyday life. So the first 3 steps are one of those fabulous videos that we do with myself and Pam and Madeline. So let me just, without further ado, bring those up. So you got to do the screen share and go to files, and then go to Google Drive, and we're going to hit share and then connect to Google Drive. And I keep running into the problem where even though there is a little guy up in the corner, we can't seem to get rid of him. Sometimes you can do it with the steps, but then when you do the recording of the Zoom, which is what I'm doing, he shows up again. So we just try to ignore him. So we're going to open this here in just a minute. We're going to do share. Here we go. And off we go. So lean back, get your popcorn, whatever, and hope you enjoy this.
Hi, my name is Frank Thacker, and I'm here with my good friends Pam McDonald and Madeline Labriola, and we are here to talk about the steps of Kingian nonviolence. And there are 6 of them, and they can actually be applied to both what we would call a personal situation. Say someone, I had an experience something like this where I was away. I came home and a neighbor had put up a fence that I thought was on my property. So there, I incorporated some of in my dealings with the family. I incorporated some of the steps, and we can maybe those will come up here and there as we talk about it. Then on the other side, they can also are important when you're dealing with a large community issue. Like say a corporation bought a big piece of land in your neighborhood and they wanted to put up office buildings, and it would really destroy the atmosphere of the neighborhood. It was a very tight-knit neighborhood. Or there was another example of a town where a business was dumping their wastewater into the river. And so those are larger events. So that's good to remember that can be used either way. The other important piece, I think, is that there are 6 of them, like I said, and it's not like, oh, I got number 1 done, so now I can go down the step or up the step to number 2. They really, I don't know what the right word is, flow together or intermingle, and you can be doing one step that will help you with the 4th step and back and forth. And so it's good to remember that. And it's also ongoing. You're always kind of doing them. So with all that great introduction, I will now start with the, I'm going to do the first step, which is information gathering. And again, this is something that can be used both on a personal individual conflict and on a larger community one. And it's more than just information gathering and just gathering the facts. I don't know if some of you are old enough to remember Dragnet, where the detective would just, he'd come to interview a witness and they'd be running on and on and on with this and that, and then he'd say, just the facts, please, madam, just the facts. So information gathering is indeed gathering of the facts, but it's also doing some research around, any past history, like with the person with the fence, and talking to some of the neighbors, I learned that the reason they put the fence up was that they were going to get a couple of dogs, and they thought that it would be a good idea to have a fence. So you learn little things like that, and then in talking with the neighbors, when you're gathering information either on the large scale or an individual one, talking with other people, getting their input and being able to listen to what they say. So it's a real, as I said before, ongoing endeavor, and it can be applied to both an individual situation and a more community large. So that's a thumbnail sketch of information gathering. And I'll now turn it over to Madeline for the second step, which is education. So if you're here, Madeline, da-da-da-da-da, you're ready.
I am.
Okay.
Well, sometimes it sounds like information gathering is similar to education, but I think education goes just a little bit deeper into the history and the importance of maybe letting people know something they didn't know before.
Yeah.
And so the information, I think in a situation like trying to solve the problem with a neighbor and the fence, the information gathering is probably as much that you can do, because education would mean like going to the library and looking up different aspects of the problem and the history behind it, and then getting that information out to other people. So in education, seems to me like it's easier to explain when you're doing something, some conflict resolution in a bigger picture. For instance, the second situation that you mentioned, where a corporation or a big company wants to come in and build something that would really drastically change your neighborhood, where maybe it would add a lot to traffic. So you'd have to go in the education piece. You'd have to find out the plan, what the zoning rules are, what the past history of that company is. Sometimes is very important. Are they environmentally concerned about things? How do they treat their, the people in the community when Because if you go to a town board meeting and you start questioning things, those people that are up front and are more willing to give you the information are much more helpful than those that are, I've had that experience where, you know, they only tell you what they want you to know and don't really tell you everything.
Oh, no, that's not true.
So education is really about research and looking at things, and in social justice work, it would probably mean then passing that information out to other people through forums and debates and different ways of telling people what the history is of something. For instance, if you were, you know, concerned about the health, remember, I'm thinking of Love Canal, and you know, this is really a long time ago. But you know how they had to find out how all of this was affecting people, the chemicals, the environmental issues. So there's the education piece can be very timely, but really, really important. And then getting that information out to other people so that they can make an informed decision is really vital to being able to resolve a conflict. You can't go into something not knowing what you're talking about. That's probably the worst thing you can do if you want to resolve a problem, either on a personal basis or you know, a bigger way. So, and Martin Luther King's nonviolence, he was very, very good at this education of the community, of the people, and of his adversaries, in order to have there be more clarity and more possibility of success. So education's in a second step.
Can I jump back in for a minute? Because I was thinking about the information gathering. Part of it is the same with the community thing in terms of getting, you know, the legal aspects, the zoning, that type of stuff, and educating yourself. But it's like I can see the difference with the larger thing where you have to get a lot of information and then educate the rest of the group about it. That's a real key piece. And I think you touched on it too also, excuse me, and this is more so with the big corporation probably than with the neighbor, but getting a sense of what's motivating them also, if you can, you know. So it's as we were saying, it's the two of them are very sort of mixed together, but they're different in other ways. So I just want to throw that out there.
Thanks.
So I guess, are you ready to move to?
I'll move to Pam.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We have Pam who's going to do step number 3.
Step number 3, personal commitment. I actually love step number 3, personal commitment, because in some ways, when you want to make change in the world, there's a way in which that, you know, if it's significant change, if it's difficult change, that's where the crux of the matter is. Where do you have the personal commitment? So personal commitment is when you assess the issue for yourself. Like, how committed am I to make this happen? What am I willing to sacrifice to make this happen? Am I clear enough on the issue that I have confidence in how I see it and some confidence that I can make a way with, you know, with collaboration with other people, if I can make a way to solve this problem? And honestly, one of the things that comes to mind for me, and please forgive me for not remembering her name, but some of us will be familiar with the issue of the Flint water situation. Yeah. Where a doctor was finding suddenly elevating levels of lead in her patients. And at first it it seemed incidental, and then the numbers were mounting, and then she began to realize something is going on here. And so she put in the time and effort to figure out, okay, what is that thing? And then she decided this was so important, she was willing to basically risk so much about her life to speak about this issue, to tell the people in charge about the issue, and to document the issue. And if you've read the book that she wrote about her efforts, she went into an enormous amount of detail, enormous amount of work, and checked her information and checked it and checked it and checked it and handed it off to other people. This did not happen because she was kind of interested in the issue. This happened because she assessed for herself that this was an essential, important issue for her community, and that even though public health was not specifically her job, public health was something she could understand and learn the language of, and that the issue was important enough that she could put her whole life, basically all her spare life energy, into solving this problem. It took a long time, but her data was indisputable. Like, people wanted to poke holes in it because it was a big problem to solve. It still is a big problem to solve, but she still cares about it. She's still fighting for it, and so are the people in her community. And only because of her personal commitment. Otherwise, it wouldn't have shown up on anybody's radar screen. It would have been shot down, and people would have been living with the consequences with no way to deal with them. So, I mean, that's just one example, but there are so many of people, Dr. King, who just found within himself the determination and commitment to continue on, even though he was risking his life, he was risking his family's life. He was putting, by taking action, he knew that people were taking risks with their lives. And it's not because he didn't care that he was risking, setting up things that would risk other people's lives. He cared a lot about it. It gave him pause. But he continued because his personal commitment to this, to civil rights and to healing the nation, the whole nation, was that deep a personal commitment for him.
And people's commitment can cost them a lot. It cost his life, but even jobs in the community. So yeah, and you have to be passionate about it, I think, in order to continue, because a lot of times there'll be a lot of negative reaction to what you're trying to do, because you're sometimes taking on a big corporation or taking on, power, people who are much more powerful. So
yeah, I found when I decided to do something with the neighbor, this was a while ago, and I don't really remember reflecting back on the notion of personal commitment, and I guess that's when I think about it, it's a real hard issue, because especially maybe on a larger, community, how can you assess how committed you are when you don't know all the fallout that may happen over a couple of years? Excuse me. So I guess maybe, do you think it's okay if you take on something and after 2 years you find you're just running out of energy? And
well, I think that step of personal commitment is like the other steps. You don't do it once, check it off, and move on, not going back to that step again. I think you assess in that first moment in time when you realize, wow, I need to really look at this. You assess in that moment what you're willing to take on. It's turning out it's taking more, then you reassess that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then the other thing is, you can start to realize, oh, this is an issue in my community or in my neighborhood or in my life. This is an issue, but you know what? It's not worth the effort it's going to take to solve it. So I'm willing to accept it. My personal commitment is in accepting this without trying to change it, because I'm up to other things right now. I'm not going to really address it.
So are you saying, and I think that's a good point, where, all right, you've got all this information and education piece, and now you're going to decide to commit yourself to this. But as the process goes on, you get more information or new information and new pieces of education. And then you say, okay, I got all this new stuff. Am I still willing to continue? So that's a good way to look at that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say something about personal commitment in solving of personal conflicts. I think that is really important to know. How committed are you to the relationship?
Yes. Yeah.
To work through. And I mean, unfortunately, I know several family members who are, like at odds with each other, and talking to each other and that kind of stuff. I'm thinking, well, what is their commitment to have this relationship be open, or be, or are they willing to give that up because they have to compromise, or they have to be the first one to reach out, So I think commitment is a very important in everything, from the simplest conflict. How much am I willing to go out and solve this? Or is it just something I'm willing to, let go and not put in the effort and the time and the energy and maybe even the, the feelings that go along with that. But I might be wrong, I might be wrong.
No. But that's another good point. When you with family members, and we all know family members, maybe not on their own, but in other families, with people don't talk to each other.
Oh, yeah.
So on an issue like that, you need both people to be involved. The thing with the neighbor, you don't really need that neighbor to be interested in the relationship, even though that may be an important thing to you, and the neighbor may not be, but you can still address the issue in a more, I don't know what the right word is, rational, legal type way. What worked out with that neighbor and myself, we were at a hearing about what he wanted to do, and it never got heard. So I went over and started talking to him afterwards, and actually between the two of us, we got an agreement worked out over a period of a couple of months. But so there's a difference. My point is a difference between, like, when it's really what you were talking about, Madeline, an ongoing type of family or long-term relationship, compared to just an individual that you don't really know. So great. That's a good point. So, all right. We got anything?
Well, just in summary, so there are 3 out of the 6 that we're discussing today: the data collection, education, and personal commitment. Right. And then next time we'll do the other 3. But you can see how they flow together. It's like, not
definitely
not, oh, I got that one checked off and this one checked off, and so
I would add a little something about the education part that I picked up when I was doing a little research for this little talk. In some places, I see education as part of that element is finding people who are good at communicating the issue. So who's going to be good at writing a little letter to the editor? Who's going to be good at, I don't know, it depends on how big the issue is, communicating in a blog or communicating in a podcast or something. Who is good at collecting that information so the useful stuff can get passed out to the public? So usually when you have an issue of any size, you're going to have to educate more than the two parties involved. You're going to have to educate
Oh,
a
yeah.
larger segment. So education has to do with how do you get the word out in a way that people can come along with you.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. When it's a community issue, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. That's for sure.
Yeah, and changing your mind. There's a lot often. I mean, we're witnessing this right now in our culture, right? A lot of misinformation. So
Oh, yeah.
to try to draw those people in that to hear new information, you know, that they can agree with or not, but at least even just to be open. And that's both sides, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, so we're good. We got the 3 steps. Everybody out there understands them perfectly now after our presentation. So if you want to learn more, join with us again when we do 4, 5, and 6.
4, 5,
Those are going to be really interesting, folks. So
yes.
all right.
Okay.
Amen.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so we're back. Hope you enjoyed that. And as you can see, these things can get pretty complex. Even as I was listening to this for, I don't know, the 4th or 5th time, I was struck by some of the new insights. So even in terms of a personal issue, say with a family member, you know, you might have another person in the family that is good at educating both sides, you know, as to what's really going on, and in sort of a very open way. The whole notion of commitment, even on a personal level, you may be working on a relationship and you may find after a couple of months, a couple of years that it's going nowhere. So you begin to realize that you don't have the energy and the time to stay committed to resolving this issue. So so as I was saying, the more I listen to these principles and steps, the more nuances, the more understanding that I get. So I think it's an important thing to keep going over these again and again. And they'll all be on the website for as long as the website's there, which hopefully will be a long time. So you can always go back and refresh your mind and look at those. And as I think I mentioned at some point, we want to go back over these one by one, just have a session on each one and take a more personal, everyday issue. And with that context in mind, again, we'd love to get some questions from you people around instances you may be struggling with, or insights of something you've learned, those types of things. So love being with you. Hope you enjoyed the session. And as I mentioned last time, and so I remember this time to end with a Indigenous or Native American blessing. So let me leave you with this. May the sun bring you energy by day. May the moon softly restore you by night. May the rain wash away your worries. May the breeze blow new strength into your being. And may you walk gently through the world and know its beauty all the days of your life. So with that in mind, say goodbye, peace, and as always, thanks for listening to us. And if you get a chance, visit our website, dailypeacemaker.com. Peace.